right, we get to come rolling on the Krug Show on a Monday, a couple minutes behind schedule. Raj in the house, RSF 49ers. Niners making moves. Off-season program begins officially today. But, man, we start with the overreaction of the year, the weekend story. Brock Purdy was quoted by a guy saying that he potentially could doesn't know if he'll be back yet this year, at any point this year. That's not exactly the quote, but he isn't sure if he'll play in 2023 was the quote, and people just ran with it like it was like the biggest news of all time. He could be out for the year. He's out for the year. But what do you think, Raj? I mean, he went on Yahoo Sport. He went did an interview with Yahoo Sports. Jory Epstein covered everything from his surgery to his excellent year, and then he discussed a number of things about how he's getting mental reps in Kyle's offense, so on and so forth. But the excerpt that was discussed most aggressively this weekend is said that Purdy is no longer wearing that brace. That remains an early step in recovery. Purdy saying Friday he's, quote, not really sure, honestly, whether he'll play in 2023 as he takes it, quote, one day at a time. Your interpretation of said quotes from Mr. Purdy.
Yeah, no, I think he said the right thing. Honestly, you don't it's like what Kyle Shanahan said a couple years ago when he says, I don't know who's going to be alive on Sunday. You can't predict injuries like this with the recovery time frame. People want like a blanket time frame. They want that's what they want. Everybody's hanging on a word of, okay, we got the time frame. Because remember, after the surgery, it was 6 to 7 months. And then, Kyle says he might be back by week 1, week 4. So people hang on these time frames. When you're talking about a rehab recovery, it's just not that concrete sometimes. And I deal with it every day. Some patients heal faster. Some patients heal, slower. And every body is different. Every body, and it depends. Every injury is different. You won't really know until he starts throwing how he's going to be feeling with throwing a ball, and he's also a football player. This injury is more common in baseball players. So I feel like that's an issue too. We don't really have a lot of subject matter on the recovery of someone in football with this injury. So like he says, you got to take it day by day. He did mention that he's feeling good. He's feeling like recovery is going well as planned. He has good communication with the doctors. And I think that's what we really have to take away from this. We don't know when he's coming back. He could be back week 1. Like he says, he could miss the season, but he could be back week 1. We don't know. We have to just take it day by day, let the body heal. And the other thing that I liked out of this information was he doesn't have the brace anymore. So there's a lot to unpack from that. Not having the brace is really going to get him to improve his range of motion. And that right there is how he's going to get to the point where he starts throwing, and then you ramp it up from there. So to me, I thought it wasn't that big of a deal. I feel like in my eyes, I was like, okay, that's something I figured, you never know with an injury. If there's a setback, then yeah, he may not be able to throw this season. But we don't know yet because he hasn't even got out there and throw. People are going to panic because they see that small little word of, oh my God, what if Brock Purdy doesn't throw this year? What if he doesn't play? Because they're not sold on Trey Lance and this and that. And now they're freaking out. But honestly, I think he said the right thing. And I think you're right. You can never put a time frame on a recovery of that magnitude.
What we've gotten out of all of this is that we don't know. Mm-hmm. We just don't know. Lynch said it. I mean, Lynch was optimistic, thinking, okay, hey, you know what? He might be able to be back sooner. But he basically said it. He basically said, hey, we don't know. The time frame could be different. It could be shorter. It could be longer. And then Shanahan, I thought, kind of laid that out as well. It's like, hey, we don't know if Brock's going to return, at any point this year. I mean, he threw out the possibility. So, it's an injury, and you don't know. All you got right now is he's feeling well, and we'll know more in a couple months. He's doing the mental reps. You'll know more in June. By June, when he starts to throw, he'll have a much better idea of how his elbow's actually responding. And who knows? It could be anything. It could be anything from he never is the same again on one end of the spectrum to he doesn't look any different, on the other end of the spectrum. And we really just don't know. So that just is why this whole offseason is so interesting on so many fronts. But it does remind us that the worst case scenario, which that he could not play at all this year, is definitely out there. And now it sounds like they want a third starting quarterback. So let's pivot from. So I mean, I my whole thing on the Purdy quotes, he's basically just saying, I don't know, taking it one day at a time. And if it's like, you're right, it's a smart thing to do. If he says it's going to be this long, then all of a sudden, well, what happened? If it doesn't work out in that amount of time, are you having setbacks? And it becomes this big drama. So you don't want to put any date out there. And then, lower, you always want to under promise and over deliver, and you don't want to create expectations where there's none. So if like he comes out and says, hey, honestly, I don't know if I'll even be able to play this year, I think that's sets the bar so low that then all of a sudden, you know what, at least people will be pleasantly surprised whenever he plays this year, if not playing this year is a possibility. So I think that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is the 49ers may know that this is a year and a half long deal, and they just don't want to say anything about it because they don't want to hurt their hand in trying to pursue other quarterbacks along the way. They want to be more stealth in the draft. They don't want people to know their urgency. I mean, for all we know, the 49ers could know that Brock's going to be out for the full year and are just wanting to play it this way for their own competitive advantage, trying to get more quarterbacks in the room, competing with the other teams in the league for those quarterbacks. So even that move would be smart. So, it's one of those things where you want to be optimistic that he can play this year, but we don't really know. And there's all kinds of reasons that we don't know. None of them are accidental. They don't want us to know, partly, and partly we aren't going to know a lot until he starts to throw in June. So for that reason, now I think the quarterback discussion becomes so much more interesting as we fast forward into this draft, because now you've got Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, a rehabbing Brock Purdy with no concrete timetable, reports that the 49ers have met not once, but actually 3 times with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the UCLA quarterback. Is that a smokescreen for them liking another quarterback? At this point, I actually would think it probably is. I mean, the fact that they've had 3 meetings with one quarterback, that almost tells me that they like another quarterback.
Yeah, that's a great statement you just said, because I was talking about this earlier, and I thought of that. I was like, okay, they're just putting all these chips on the table, because what did you just say? The 49ers are in stealth mode. If Brock Purdy doesn't, have the ability to come back this year, they're not going to tell everybody right now. They want to keep that under wraps, right? And again, if he can, and he's sitting there saying, oh, I don't know if I could play this season, the pity card, and then he comes back, everybody's going to be like, oh, what a warrior. He may not have been able to come back. So it's a stealth mode there. But the 49ers have also met with Jake Haener a couple times. So, yeah, DTR, they're giving everybody all the lip service of, yeah, we're meeting with DTR. He snapped a picture on his Instagram yesterday, and it makes everybody look like, okay, is DTR the guy? I mean, it could be. It could very well be. But it also could be a smokescreen for Jake Haener, who they've had interest in. That's another guy they went and looked at, and they were at the pro day. It could be a smokescreen for Jake Haener. So then it comes down to which one of those 2 guys fits their system. Or would Haener be the guy? Would it make more sense to go get him? Would it make more sense to go get DTR? And then you have to look at, John Lynch, Trey, and Kyle Shanahan. Which one do they want? Because back when they were looking at Trey Lance a couple years ago, there was the Matt Jones, there was the Trey Lance, there was Justin Fields, and then some people were saying, Kyle's guy is so and so. But John Lynch likes this guy. So then it comes back down to that whole argument, and I do feel like with them jamming all this news and everybody knows that DTR is the guy, it kind of feels weird to me that we're like, oh, it just seems too obvious. Like 49ers never make it too obvious, in my opinion. Like it could be that this year they're just oblivious. They're not, making any smoke. But I do feel like you're right. You hit something. Like it could be Haener. I don't know.
Well, and it's a really intriguing quarterback draft after the first round. I mean, people always talk about the first round quarterbacks, and and obviously rightfully so, right? Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, these guys, Hendon Hooker to maybe a lesser degree, are just awesome physical talents. I mean, Levis throws missiles. Richardson's one of the greatest combination of size, speed the quarterback position's ever seen. He's 6'4", 245, and hugely fast. Bryce Young they say, has anticipatory skills and is really off the charts, and his processing ability. He moves exceptionally well. Great athlete at 5'10", about 200 pounds. And then you get C.J. Stroud, who a lot of people feel is the ultimate blue chipper. I mean, he had just everything about him. I mean, his workouts have been incredible. His numbers are incredible. But he didn't do well in the cognitive drill, so who knows? But all these guys are high, are definitely first round prospects. But then you go to that next level, and you mentioned Jake Haener. There's Jake Haener, there's DTR, Tanner McKee's a very mature player. There's a lot of people who have made really compelling arguments to me about Jaron Hall, the BYU kid who's got Brock Purdy same size, but maybe even better athleticism. I mean, he's really, really exciting. And then a lot of people think that guys like Clayton Tune and Max Duggan have big-time intangibles, and you could maybe even throw Stetson Bennett in that mix. These are college quarterbacks that maybe have physical limitations but have all kinds of intangibles. I think it's interesting. I think the one thing that the 49ers, I think, are going to want in this player is they're going to want a player who's potentially ready to play right away. Not that they're going to play him right away, but I think they want guys who can contribute, who's played a lot of football. And DTR's played 5 years at UCLA. I mean, he's really experienced. Jake Haener started at UW and finished at Fresno State. He's played a ton of football. McKee's played a lot. I mean, Duggan's finished up at TCU this year, had a huge year. So I mean, there's some experienced quarterbacks in this draft. The question I would have is, if you're talking about DTR, you probably got to use one of your top picks on him.
Yeah.
Do you really think the 49ers with, tackle, edge rusher, corner, D-line, all safety needs, do you think they could potentially go quarterback really high in this draft?
Possibly, and that would tell me that, maybe Brock Purdy isn't going to be ready for a little bit more time. So then that can give us a little bit more information on what we're, talking about with the whole Brock Purdy situation. And maybe they're a little bit more, cautious on the situation. So if they do take him in the third, or a quarterback in the third, maybe it tells us a little bit something of, okay, we have to really insulate ourselves. Although I know they have Darnold. But with one thing you said, what I definitely agree with, they need a seasoned rookie. It's hard, I call him like a veteran rookie. It's hard to say that, a rookie is seasoned, but when you come out of college and you've played a lot of games at a big conference, that's, I think, what the 49ers are looking at, especially now after what they saw with Brock Purdy. He played 4 years at a big school, Iowa State, and he seemed like he was a little bit more poised than most rookies in that situation. So, maybe Haener, would be a guy, but you could get him a little later than third. So if they're absolutely dialed in on DTR, then they might have to go for the third round pick. But again, I think that's why they're spending so much time with this guy, because if they're going to go and get this guy, then yes, it has to be a third round pick. So you need to know, if you're committing a third round pick, which essentially is, your highest value picks on a quarterback, that he is the right guy. So I think that's why they're investing so much time. On the other flip side of saying it's a smokescreen is they got to make sure, because this quarterback room has been the topic of 49ers offseason for years and years and years. You got to make sure you get this guy right, because the fan base is going to revolt. If you go get a quarterback in the third round, we're going to be pissed, because you do have Trey Lance, and you did spend money to get Sam Darnold, who's getting paid decent money for a quarterback. But in the grand scheme of things, if you really look at it, the quarterback room for the 49ers, you're not paying him a lot of money. Jalen Hurts, he got paid a lot of money, man. And the 49ers are getting paid for 4 quarterbacks, potentially, maybe $15 million. That's nothing. So in the grand scheme of things, yes, it would be weird to take a quarterback in the third round when you have all these quarterbacks. But if you really look at it, they're not spending a lot of money on these quarterbacks. And I think that's what they want to do, is make sure they're paying their quarterbacks on a cheap rookie deal right now, so they can sign everybody else, Nick Bosa, Brandon Aiyuk, and everybody else. But could they spend a third round pick on DTR? they could if they absolutely like him, and I think that's why they brought him in 3 times now. But again, there's a lot of other guys. Like you said, McGee, that's another guy I really like that I feel like they can get, and you don't have to spend the 3rd-round pick. So again, they have to do their homework to make sure they absolutely like DTR. If not, there's a lot of other options. I like Duggan too.
Yeah, they're getting a lot of close looks at these quarterbacks. I mean, Hayner was at their facility for the pro day. They were down at on the farm for Tanner McKee's pro day. DTR 3 meetings with him. It really interesting. And then Jaron Hall to me. I mean, when I watch his film, I think, wow, this guy's really something else. He's special. He's a special player. Clayton Tune's got all kinds of intangibles. Max Duggan. Look what he did this year at TCU. He's a little, he's 6'1", 207, but he has 4.5 speed. There's just a lot of intriguing quarterbacks, and it's pretty obvious they're going to go for one. Now, will they go for DTR? And if they do, you're talking about a 3rd-round pick. That's interesting. Now, you did mention Jalen Hurts. Let's get to that because the other story of the day is that the Eagles have signed Jalen Hurts to a big money extension and gave him $51 million guaranteed. Or that's what he counts against their cap this year, $51 million. The 49ers quarterback room, their entire quarterback room right now, as you already said, Raj, counts for $15 million. So to me, that's a huge advantage for the 49ers going into this year. I mean, the Eagles are paying their quarterback for the first time, big time franchise altering, highest money in the NFL. And you have arguably one of the cheapest quarterback rooms in the game. This seems to me to be their best chance to be that dominant team in the NFC and get beyond the Eagles, just because that right there is a huge advantage. That's $51 million compared to $15 million, on quarterbacks, and you can't. It's a hard cap. I mean, you only have so much money to spend on your roster, so that should be a huge advantage now that the Eagles are spending that much for Hurts.
Yeah, absolutely. $255 million contract extension. I just had to when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, that's a lot of money. So it tells you they're all committed to this guy. And you're right, they're going to have to take some losses with this. And their kind of window is win now. You're not going to be able to sign a lot of players. They lost Javon Hargrave to the 49ers. So that's one person we took from them to make them weaker. So right now, in the NFC, if you want to strike and win this championship, it's in these next couple of years. I mean, Jalen Hurts is great. I think he can take them far, but they will have some weaknesses because they're not going to be able to sign a lot of players, now that they're locked into this contract. Obviously, there's a lot of outs with the contract, with the cap. You can move money down and do all these weird things, but at the end of the day, man, this is a huge contract, and it's going to lock them into a point where there's going to be times where they're going to lose out on players. And if the 49ers, with a cheap quarterback room, they might be able to strike and get big time players. Again, Hargrave was one of them this year. They got CMC last off or mid-season on a trade, and then you can restructure his deal and continue to bolster your team. If you have a cheap quarterback, on your roster for a little bit, you're doing great things. So then it goes back to this whole, drafting a quarterback. If the 49ers go, let's just say hypothetically, let's say they take DTR. Let's say somehow he comes into the team because of injuries or something, and then he blossoms. You got another quarterback that could be a potential, game-winning quarterback on your roster or a franchise quarterback for another cheap contract. So it's going to continue with the 49ers. And then they can go and sign other players, or re-sign Brandon Aiyuk next year. So 49ers are in a very, very unique situation. I know a lot of people are upset about the quarterback, figure it out. They need to get healthy. They need to pick a guy. But if one of these guys pans out, they're not going to be getting paid nearly as much as Jalen Hurts. So, but at the same time, the 49ers do need to make sure they get a franchise level quarterback because that's what's kind of limiting them away from winning the Super Bowl. But man, Jalen Hurts, shout out to him. I wish I was making that much money.
Exactly. Well, I'll tell you one approach that I would love to see them take with the quarterbacks in the draft. Hey, you just picked Brock Purdy. Nobody else did. You picked him, so you had a pretty good instinct on that. Whoever had that instinct, whoever wrote those reports, take a deep dive on this year's quarterback group. And I guarantee you one of these second-tier quarterbacks is going to be very, very good. Figure out which one it is. Draft that guy. And then you look at the rest of that room, there's going to be questions about every single one of these guys. Sam Darnold, does he stink? or did he kind of find himself last year in Carolina? I thought his highlight reel looked really good, but you look at his numbers late in the year in one of the games that he played, it was atrocious. So, is Sam Darnold a new man, or is it the same old Sam Darnold that's really not been very good? That's question one. Question two, is Trey Lance this all-world player that you thought you were getting, going to step right into being the next great, Patrick Mahomes type quarterback, or is he non-functional, can't play at all in the NFL? We're going to find out. Brock Purdy, is he the same guy that led you down this unbelievable stretch last year and looked like he was headed to the Super Bowl? Or is he a guy with, who can't throw anymore because of a terrible elbow injury that was somewhat freaky? But, is he going to be able to make a return? And then all these quarterbacks in the draft have questions about them. So it's a very unique situation because the Niners have as good a roster as there is in pro football. They're the Vegas leader in the over-under total as far as this upcoming year. Vegas is expecting them to be very good. And yet the most important position by far is quarterback. And it's April 17th, and we really don't have any idea who's going to be the quarterback, how it's going to look, how they're going to play. It's going to be absolutely riveting for sure to see this thing come together because the talent around the quarterback is phenomenal. To me, if they can get another quarterback in that room to compete, that would be a great thing. The other great thing would be if they could really use this draft to bolster their physicality on their offensive line. So they got a couple of real, horses up front to block. That would really help whoever is going to be quarterbacking this team. Now we're about 22 minutes in. Thanks to our title sponsor, Pig and a Pickle. Check them out in Corte Madera and Emeryville. They're open 7 days a week in Marin County, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. TX says, Pig and a Pickle. And then we got this one from SG Sports Talk channel. He says, hey, Larry, what should I order from Pig and a Pickle? I say get the brisket. Get a little side of the brisket chili. You can't go wrong with the brisket chili. It is, first of all, I don't know. I've never done chili with brisket in it, but it's absolutely phenomenal. It's unbelievable. So, and also if you're in Marin County, get the potato chips. The potato chips are a rare find. Pig and a Pickle. There you go. Best barbecue in Northern California. Bryant Culp says, Larry and Raj, fire. All right, the Niners made a move today, Raj. Yeah. Actual transaction, and it's a good one. They signed Chris Conley to a 1-year deal. He's a free agent wide receiver, 6'3", 205 pounds, third-round pick out of Georgia by the Chiefs. And then he spent the next 2 seasons in Jacksonville and then played with the Texans for the last year and a half, wound up with the Titans for the final 7 games of the season. People look at that and go, well, is that an exciting move or not? Well, I'll just say this. This guy's 30 now. He caught over 40 passes during his 2 seasons with the Jaguars. I like him just because you're talking about a guy who's a great athlete, who's got size. He's a veteran. He's a guy who I think, is kind of a late bloomer, and he has big-time speed. Chris Conley had 4.3 speed coming out of Georgia. So he's got some incredible athleticism to him. And, you got Debo, you got Aiyuk, you re-signed Jawan Jennings today. You have Ray McLeod. You have Danny Gray. You have Tay Martin, who I think is a tremendous young receiver. That's 6 right there. Conley's number 7. In some ways, unless they're going to trade an Aiyuk or Debo or Jennings at the top of their depth chart, they may not need any wide receivers in this draft. What do you think, Raj? Conley's he's a 30-year-old player. Some people would just say, camp body. He'll be cut in camp. But I think he's a little bit more than a camp body. He's a little bit more talented, a little bit more athletic than people think.
Yeah, no, it's a good under-the-radar type signing. Again, people that say camp body, it could be because they are starting the offseason program today. You need to make sure you have players through the whole system. But the 49ers, they like to do these type of moves. Last year around this time, they got Marcus Johnson, veteran. He stuck around the team a little bit. Again, special teams, you may need to call up a guy here and there. He could be one of those guys where, like Dante Johnson, they kept him on the team, practice squad, call him up 1 week. You never know the injuries. And he does have some upside, 30 years old. He's the oldest player on the roster now. So he could be a good veteran. We got a lot of young receivers, like you said, Danny Gray, Newsome, and all those other guys you mentioned. So it's a very young group, and you need some veterans on this team. Guy that's been around the league for a while, he does have some upside there. So I don't think it's like it wasn't like this splashy move, but it was a solid signing. They do this every year, add some veterans, and that could come in and help these young guys out. And again, maybe down the line in a pinch, you need a guy, then you can call him up or whatnot if he makes the practice squad. I don't know if he'll make the final roster because you mentioned some wide receivers on this team, and they don't typically have more than 5 or 6. So it's going to be tough to crack this roster in terms of receivers, but it does set them up in terms of depth at wide receiver going into the draft. So you don't have to really go out there and really reach for a wide receiver. They can go and focus on edge and tackle and safety. Those are the positions they really need to go and grab, or a tight end, right? So I like the move. It was a low-key, under-the-radar move, and he has good upside. Again, he had I think his best season in 2019. He had like 700 yards receiving or something like that, 5 touchdowns. Good veteran guy. He could come in and help out the youngsters.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like it. He's a big veteran receiver with huge hands who played at Georgia. They ran the ball a ton, so he didn't really get a lot of reps at Georgia. But here were his combine numbers when he came out of Georgia. Now, granted, he's 30 now, but he ran 4.35 with a 1.52 split, a vertical jump of, wait for it, 45-inch vertical. I mean, that's ridiculous. 11.7 broad jump, 18 reps of 225, which is great strength for a receiver. This guy's a freak. I mean, he's just 30, and he's been around the block, but he was as freaky as they come. 4.3 speed on a 6.3 frame with 45-inch vertical. I mean, that's a ridiculous athlete. This guy's always been a crazy athlete. He's slowed down a little bit, but I'm eager to see what he looks like this summer, and I wouldn't be shocked at all if he made the team.
Oh, okay.
Wouldn't be shocked. Well, because Conley, I mean, to me, he's the kind of receiver that would make you go, well, maybe they're not going to go receiver in this draft until late. Maybe they're, because maybe the a guy like that, I think, is probably, I mean, a big receiver who can run 4.4 at this point, and have that kind of leaping ability. I just think that there's a chance he makes the roster. If nothing else, he's a guy that if he was cut by the Niners, somebody will most likely give him a shot. He's going to play. He's an NFL receiver.
He's definitely a lot different than the guys they have in the room right now. A lot of yak guys and stuff. This guy could go up and get it, red zone type guy. So, yeah, I think he'll threaten, but I think it'll be tough to crack this roster. Or maybe they bringing him in because they don't like some of the younger guys they have, out there. So it's going to be just more competition. I do like the signing because you're right. He has a lot of upside for a veteran that's been in the league for a while. I think he has some good upside. So we'll see. It's going to be, at the end of the day, man, training camp, it's so much fun. All the competition brings the best out of everybody.
No question about it. Now, there was a report last week that maybe Nick Caserio would jump after the draft to the Patriots, and that maybe Adam Peters would be his replacement with the Texans. There's a report today that Caserio says he's not going anywhere after the draft and that he's staying with the Texans. So that's kind of an interesting thing. What do you make of that report? Mike Silver of the Chronicle kind of doubled down, saying that, Adam Peters was the targeted replacement, and, this rumor had multiple layers and would reunite Peters and D'Amico Ryans in like a San Francisco South situation there. What do you think? I mean, do you think it's still in the cards, or what do you think of the report now that Caserio says he's not going anywhere?
Yeah, no, when I first came out, I laughed because I was like, okay, this is just, people throwing rumors out. Again, it's the low part of the offseason. People need some stories and this and that. So Caserio today, what he says, he goes, I'm almost embarrassed that he has to basically say that he's not leaving. He said, I feel sort of like Leonardo DiCaprio in Wolf of Wall Street. I'm not leaving. So he goes, there's no substantial evidence to this thing. So he shot it down. And the whole Adam Peters thing, I remember, I was like, why is he really mentioning it? Because, okay, first off, if Caserio was to leave, obviously Peters would probably be the first name that's going to be thrown around because everybody wants him as a GM. If I'm a team that's looking for a GM, I would look into Adam Peters. He's great at what he does. And D'Amico and him have some, history as they, work together for the 49ers. So it makes sense that they would throw that out there. But if you remember in January, Adam Peters already turned down multiple offers, I think from like the Cardinals and a couple other teams to be their GM because he's happy at where he's at. So I think right now he's content. He already turned down those offers. So that's why I was like, I don't even think he would even entertain it. And the 49ers are still on the cusp of a Super Bowl roster. Like we said, they have all these other great players around the quarterback situation that we're still trying to figure out. But CMC, Bosa, Kittle, Debo, all these great, highly paid players, Trent Williams, Warner, like you'd be silly to leave this roster for a team like Houston when the 49ers have a great chance of winning a Super Bowl in the next 2 years. They can figure this quarterback situation. So I didn't think there was any substance to Adam Peters leaving. Again, people are going to throw his name out because, of course, he would be a top candidate anywhere for any team that's losing a GM. That's kind of my thought on it. And then I laughed when, Casario shot it down. He was like, I can't believe I even have to say this. So, yeah, that was my take on it. And you can officially squash
didn't Peters come to the Niners because he was a Bay Area guy who wanted to come home? I mean, the idea that he would just run to Texas, to Houston, nonetheless. I mean, I don't. To me, there may not be a worse climate. I don't know if you've ever been, how much time you've spent in Houston, but it's not necessarily a choice destination as far as nice weather. But I thought Peters was kind of the hand-picked replacement for Lynch whenever Lynch decides to either do whatever else he wants to do, kick himself upstairs, whatever his next move is. I thought Peters was kind of thought to be the next guy in charge here. So that would surprise me if he jumped.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got it made right now. He knows he's like the draft guru for the 49ers. He's going to continue to increase his stock with the 49ers. And the day, let's say the 49ers win a Super Bowl, John Lynch, if he jumps and becomes an announcer again or a commentator or whatever he does with Amazon, or if he becomes a president or whatever happens to him, Adam Peters is the natural guy to replace John Lynch. He's just waiting in the wings. So and like you said, his family lives in Cupertino. So he's getting paid a lot of money to be close to his family and destroy the draft. He's doing well.
Matt Miller of formerly of the Bleacher Report, now I think with ESPN, one of the draft gurus, basically says the 49ers are sniffing around tight ends as much or more than any other team in the league. Now, I don't know exactly how he quantifies something like that, but I think it's basically his way of saying the Niners are all over the tight ends. Does this surprise you, considering maybe their best offensive players at tight end?
It doesn't surprise me. I think, as we know, Kittle, 30 years old, and he plays very, 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 very physical. He plays he trains hard. He trains hard. He works hard. He plays hard. All that. If you listen to some of his recent interviews and things like that, I think Theo Vaughn podcast, he talked about every week after a game he feels like he's in a car wreck. So he's in multiple car wrecks a season. At the end of the season, he feels like he's in shambles. So yeah, he's a guy that in a couple of years, I don't know where he's going to be in the league. Will he even still be in the league? And you'd be silly not to replace him or get a guy that you can mentor to be the heir apparent and just give him some help because, the 49ers, their offensive style, it dictates it would be smart to have another tight end. You got Charlie Warner, the blocker. You got Ross Dwelly, who they re-signed, but he hasn't given us enough over the years. Like he has talent, but if they can go get a guy like Sam Laporta, and we've talked about tight end on this show every couple of weeks here now, and I think they have probably done their due diligence on tight ends, and I think they absolutely should. Now, I know there's people out there that say, oh, if they go draft a tight end, that means they're going to trade George Kittle. It doesn't mean that to me. He's a captain. He's one of their biggest leaders. It just means that they need a guy eventually, if you think about the future, that can maybe replace him. And the 49ers are always 10 steps ahead of people. So I think that they will take a tight end early in this draft. Sam Laporta has been working out with Kittle and his group over the last couple of weeks. So I think it might be Laporta if they take a tight end in the third round.
Really going back to Iowa for another tight end. Well, I'll say this. I mean, Laporta is one of the safest players in the draft. I mean, I'm a huge college football fan. This guy's solid every year. I mean, I've watched him for a number of years now. Their quarterback was one of the worst quarterbacks I think I've ever seen in my entire life. I mean, it's like this guy, Spencer Petras, was just like couldn't get the ball out. I mean, it was just amazing that they scored any points at all. I mean, their offense was so bad. And yet Laporta is, he's just really, really solid. He's an Illinois kid, 6'4", about 245 pounds, 250, somewhere in that range. He's a hustler. He understands kind of how to sit in the soft spot in the zone. Obviously, they coach the position well there, right? Because he was there. Hawkinson was there. Kittle was there. I mean Dallas Clark. Iowa's got a long lineage of tight ends, so it's kind of like linebackers at Penn State. It's a good that you like to see the Iowa tight end. And this guy's a 3-year team captain in high school. This guy 4-year letterman, basketball, track, football. This guy's a great all-around athlete. So, and he's been a productive player. You'll find bigger, stronger, faster guys, but as far as just, solid player, I would like bet anything that Sam Laporta will have a good to very good NFL career. I don't think he's going to be a superstar, but I also would almost bet anything that he's not a bust. He's not going to be one of these guys that comes in, you're like, what? Why'd you draft that guy? No, he's going to be pretty good.
Oh, absolutely. This guy has the makings of a really, really good tight end. Again, to me, Iowa's tight end university. They're tight end youth. That's the way I look at them, because over the last couple of years, decades, they've put together some amazing tight ends. His athletic profile is it's actually better than Kittle's coming out of college. And this guy could be a very, very good player in this league. And if he gets to go and play next to Kittle, and Kittle can kind of mentor him and make him the next George Kittle, I think that's an absolute W right there. And again, I feel, these guys do have some chemistry. If you've seen, they've been working out together. And again, the Iowa connection, you know how hyped up Kittle would be if they go draft another guy out of Iowa. I guarantee you he'd be at his house and they'd be instant best friends, Larry. Like, please get this guy.
Get this guy. He has to be a 49er. All right. The Niners started their offseason program today. May 22nd is OTA phase number 3. The mandatory minicamp is coming up in middle of May. I believe there's a post-draft rookie minicamp mixed in there as well. What do you think? What's the big question that you're looking to see answered this offseason?
Who's the quarterback? I think that's the question, man. There's really nothing else. I feel in the draft, I want to know who the heck they're drafting, obviously. Who's going to be the edge? Can Drake Jackson take that next step? Can Elijah Mitchell stay healthy? Will they draft another running back? So I think the draft is going to answer a lot of the questions we all want. But honestly, the biggest question still remains to me, who the heck's the quarterback? But then it's the second-year players. Who's taking that leap? Sam Womack, is he going to take a leap? They signed a lot of cornerbacks this offseason. Oliver and Hartsfield. Can Sam Womack leapfrog them for that nickel spot? And we talked about wide receiver Juwan Jennings. He signed his exclusive rights tender. This is his contract season, basically. He's not getting paid a lot, $900K for a 1-year season. He's going to go out there and want to, have a good season. So will the 49ers be able to bring him back next year, or will he go to another team? So I'm intrigued to see the wide receiver team and who steps up. Danny Gray last year was a guy that, we had a lot of hype coming out of the draft, but he didn't really do much. Can he take a leap, And then who's going to be that breakout guy? Because last year you had Talanoa Hufanga, second year in the league, all pro. Is there going to be a guy from this draft class that does that, So, and then the biggest question to me outside of quarterback is O-line. We've been talking about it. Who the heck can step up and make this O-line better? Obviously, right now the chips are in on Colton McKivitz on that right tackle spot. Will he be good enough to be that right tackle that we need? I don't know. So I think those are the big questions that I'm kind of looking at heading into the draft.
It's interesting to me. I'm looking at this going, okay, you just signed Chris Conley, who's, I think, a really talented receiver. You just signed Juwan Jennings to his 1-year tender. You have Deebo Samuel signed up. Tay Martin. You're holding a pre-draft meeting yesterday with Ronnie Bell from USC, according to Aaron Wilson down in Houston. The former Michigan receiver is meeting with the 49ers. You typically only keep 5 wide receivers. Is this setting up for a wide receiver trade? They don't really seem like why are they meeting with all these guys and looking at receivers if, I mean, there's been a lot of rumor about Brandon Aiyuk being traded. The reason I bring this up now is because if it's true that Brock Purdy may not play at all this year, and maybe that's just something he said, right? Who knows? Maybe he's just covering all of his bases. Maybe he feels great and everything's going to be fine. He'll be there. But if by chance he's going to miss a significant portion of the year, and they're going to keep all their quarterbacks, that means they're still, they had Isaiah Foskey from Notre Dame, who's a late first, early second round pick, show up at their local pro day, meeting with them. What do you think? I mean, is there any chance Aiyuk gets moved? Because if you put Aiyuk in this draft, Aiyuk would probably be the number one receiver drafted. If not number one, he would definitely be a first round pick. He doesn't have a big contract. I mean, there's lots of teams that supposedly want DeAndre Hopkins, but don't want to pay his $19 million contract. If you're trading for a Brandon Aiyuk, you can get him for a totally reasonable amount contract-wise because he's still on a very cheap deal.
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, is this the story that we're not talking enough about? Do you think there's a chance that Aiyuk gets moved? Otherwise, Conley gives them a sixth or a seventh receiver, and they're looking at other receivers in the draft. I don't know. It's a very deep draft for receivers. It seems to me like you could move Aiyuk and probably do a decent chance of replacing him in the draft and maybe get a very high pick. Only reason I bring it up is why is Foskey going to meet with them if they don't have a pick anywhere near where he's supposed to go, which is right around 25 to 35.
Yeah, no. Is there an opportunity or is there a chance? Absolutely. There's always a chance the 49ers can trade something because a couple years back, I remember DeForest Buckner, he's going to be with the team. And then guess what? They traded him, and I was shook. So after that year, I was like, well, anything's possible. Like, it's possible. Do I think it's going to happen? Absolutely not. Because I believe that next week they'll officially pick up his fifth-year option. Teams get to – I think next week they get to meet with the media. Players get to meet with the media. I think I remember reading that from Cam Inman. So I think we'll hear some more information regarding Brandon Aiyuk. But you're right. His contract, compared to someone like a D-Hop who's out there, who's a little older, is a lot cheaper. So if the 49ers do want to trade someone, Brandon Aiyuk makes sense because, again, he's coming up on his fourth year. Next year will be his fifth year. And they're in this limbo situation of, will they even be able to extend him next year? If not, you could trade him now and get some really good value because I think he'd be worth a lot in a trade. And then, again, we talked about this before, Larry, is next year you get to the point, okay, you have Debo and Aiyuk. Can you bring them both back? Do you get to sign one? Do you have to trade one? So if they want to avoid that whole controversy of trading one or something next year, you do it this year, you soften the blow, you get something out of them. So can they trade them? You're absolutely right. And they are looking at receivers because maybe just in case they do, they have to safeguard their room. But also I think that maybe they're looking at receivers because maybe they're just not sure about a guy like Danny Gray or Tay Martin who, they're younger guys. Maybe you want to upgrade that position. And then also, like we talked about Jennings, maybe he's not coming back next year. So you want to make sure you're planning ahead for that as well. Because, again, 1 year tender, there's no guarantee that Juwan Jennings is coming back. I know he's not a Brandon Aiyuk type player, but he's a very important role player for this team. He does a lot of stuff that goes unnoticed in the box score. So, you always got to plan and look ahead. But to answer your question of, is Trey Lance, or not Trey Lance, is Brandon Aiyuk a guy that they could trade? Absolutely. They absolutely could trade him because anything's possible. I never thought they'd trade DeForest Buckner, and here we are a couple years later, and I'm still surprised.
Oh, I know. And you could argue that they never really found a replacement for Buckner. They tried Kinlaw. They had DJ Jones. And that's what Hargrave really is, right? He's the replacement for Buckner. Batman Lives says Lamar or Rodgers versus B, Eric and Debo for the same money. You're talking about your leader in the room in Eric Armstead, very much the leader in the room. You're talking about your tone-setting number one weapon. I mean, that would obviously change your team quite a bit. Ben Roethlisberger came out and said that he could see Rodgers with the Niners. Doesn't mean anything, really. It just means that he knows that he could run their system. But Yeah, I don't think the Niners. I think Rodgers is going to be a Jet. I think Lamar is going to be a Raven.
Yeah, I agree with that take. I don't see Lamar leaving, especially now that they got OBJ over there. I think they did enough to keep him, pacify him a little bit, and I think that I think during the draft, the Jets will finally trade for Aaron Rodgers. That whole situation has been just crazy.
Seriously, wrap it up, guys. I mean, you're going to make a deal, make a deal. If you're not going to make a deal, don't make a deal. But I mean, I think Rodgers is a little different. I think it's safe to say. Raj, good stuff. Tell people what you got cooking this week on your blowing up IG, your YouTube. You're a force of nature. We're 1 week till the draft. Are you doing anything special going into the week prior to the draft? You and I are going to do a mock draft next week. By the way, we should tell everybody.
Yeah, we'll do our mock next week. And honestly, I just been working a lot. I've been working tons of hours, just because it's been I need to work. So I don't have too much special. It's my birthday this week, so I'll probably be at the work celebrating that, enjoying. So I don't have too much crazy stuff planned this week. But next week during the draft, we'll have a lot of content, live streams, all that stuff, mock drafts. So not this week, nothing too crazy this week. But next week for sure, we'll have a lot of cool content coming up. But yeah,
Raj, how will you celebrate your birthday? Chuck E. Cheese. Remember back in the day if you lived on the peninsula, Farrell's was a big. You have a little party at the house with the family, round table. What do we? What's the celebration for Raj? I mean, you're kind of a big baller shot caller. You're probably doing something exotic, maybe flying off to a foreign land.
When you get older, I guess it doesn't matter. When I was a kid, it was Pistol Pete's Pizza, not Chuck E. Cheese.
Ooh.
But as I get older, whatever my daughter wants to do. So she told me she wants to, I got some friends and stuff like that. I got a couple days. So one day I'm going to go to the Warriors game. That's one celebration. And my daughter wants to go get ramen and go to the movies. I'll take her do that. And then Saturday, whatever my other friends want to do, we'll do. So, I mean, whatever people want to do, I'm down for. But, yeah, when I was younger, I used to love to travel and things like that. But, as you get a family, you kind of have to do whatever the kids want to do.
There you go. I hear that. I hear that. As a man with 4, we're just here to fund the effort. That's really it. Yeah. Raj, good stuff, man. Have a great Monday.
You too, man. Appreciate you, Larry. Have a good one.
There you go. Raj in the house. RSF 49ers is a force of nature. If you're not following Raj, go follow him right now. Go follow him right now. He is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. All right. So just to kind of recap stories of the day in Ninerland, the Niners have signed Chris Conley to a 1-year deal, and Juwan Jennings also signed his 1-year tender. So Juwan's coming back. Chris Conley's added to the mix, and the Niners suddenly are very loaded at wide receiver going into the draft. Debo's your 1, Aiyuk's your 2, Juwan Jennings is your solid 3. I mean, that right there is 3 damn good receivers. Debo's a tone setter. Aiyuk, I think, is a star receiver in the making. Hasn't quite come of age yet, but I could expect him to bust out at any minute. Juwan Jennings has made some of the biggest catches for the 49ers the last few years. Then you got Ray McLeod, who's a terrific special teamer. Had the 1 fumble at the end of the year, but man, Ray is the truth. Then you got Danny Gray, home run hitter. I think he's going to emerge as a terrific downfield threat if you can get him the ball. Then you got Tay Martin, who's got huge catch radius. And now in year 2, I fully expect him to look like something this preseason. And now you had Chris Conley. You also have Daz Newsome, I'm not as big a fan of, but Chris Conley, that's, right there, that's 7 receivers. And they're still looking at receivers in the draft. And it's a really good receiver draft. They got a bunch of picks. So it just does kind of beg the question. I'll throw it out to the chat like I threw it to Raj. Are we seeing this, would they be signing veteran guys? I mean, I know you could say, Conley's a camp body. But I don't know. I think he's a little bit more than a camp body. I mean, I read you his measurables coming out. 6'3", 4.35 speed, 45-inch vertical. I know he's floated around. But Conley, Martin, Gray, that's 3. McLeod, that's 4. Jennings is 5. Aiyuk 6. Debo's 7. That's great wide receiver depth. I'll say this. Either they're going to move Aiyuk and they're establishing a surplus, or they're not going to move Aiyuk, but they're not going to draft a receiver at all. And they're just going to bypass this whole receiver class and focus their needs elsewhere. And that's possible too. But I'll say this, I'd be happy right now if they didn't add a single wide receiver and they just went to camp with what they've got here. I think they're totally covered. I mean, think about it. You've got Debo's your gadget play guy. Aiyuk can run the full tree. Jennings is just an absolute huge radius go-to monster on third down. Great hands. I mean, Gray's your vertical speed that takes the top off the defense. So you got that piece. That's an essential piece, believe it or not. You got to have one guy to make them honor your deep speed. Ray's your jack of all trades, can run all the gadget plays. How about the run against the Commanders last year and then never ran him again? He got to the edge at will. I thought I was watching Raheem Mostert go down the sideline there at Levi's. So you got Ray. I'm a huge fan of Tay Martin. Conley's a physical freak, a few years older, but he's not ancient. He's 30. He's kind of a late bloomer anyway, and he was really underutilized at Georgia. So, I mean, that's a nice receiving core right there. If you don't get a single receiver in this draft, you go to camp with that, you're fine. You're absolutely fine. So they may have taken with this move of Chris Conley, they may have taken wide receiver and just said, you know what, let's not mess around with wide receivers. We'll go in a different direction in the draft. I do expect the 49ers to go for a tight end. I think Matt Miller's report, they're looking hard at the tight ends. It just makes a lot of sense. I mean, they always kind of look 1 year ahead, right? And I think they're looking down the road on Kittle. And then they're looking at Kittle's age and the fact that he's such a physical football player. And if Matt Miller says that that they've done more than any other team as far as their homework on the tight ends, and he points to Zach Kuntz, the 6'8" tight end from Old Dominion, Luke Schoonmaker, the 6'6" tight end from Michigan, and Tucker Kraft from South Dakota State as the options in round 3 early in the draft. And I looked at all three of those guys. Schoonmaker had this awesome pro day in Ann Arbor, so I think a lot of scouts are hot on him. I just think he's got a frame where he could add a lot of strength, and he's already a really, really physical football player. Kuntz is got great hand-eye coordination, and he's 6'8", and so I think there's some intrigue about him. But when watching him run routes, I don't see Jimmy Graham. I see a guy who kind of lumbers, who's going to have injuries. He did a virtual meeting with the 49ers. He's a great athlete for sure, but he only made 15 college starts. He runs kind of upright. He just looks like a developmental type player. Even though 6'8", it would be awesome to have a 6'8" receiver like Kuntz, but I don't know. I don't know about his actual ability to stay healthy in the NFL. I see, safeties and tight end, safeties and corners and linebackers going low, and this guy just getting chopped to the ground. And then there's Cameron Latu from Bama. They worked him out as well. But Schoonmaker is really interesting for sure. So he's a 6'6" guy who's got ability. He's about 250 right now, but he could put on, 10, 15 pounds easy. The best of these guys might be the South Dakota State guy, Tucker Kraft. I watched him a lot. He averaged almost 13 yards per catch this year for South Dakota State, and he's got great acceleration. And you look at him and you're like, wow, this guy is something else. Now I know he played at kind of a lower level of competition, but he's intriguing. And then I'll say this: the other guy that I think you got to take a look at is the Eastern Kentucky former converted quarterback, Dak Allen, who's probably going to be a day 3 guy or maybe undrafted, but he's a key athlete. He had 25 reps on the bench, which would have been number 1 among all tight ends at his local pro day, and he's kind of known for his playmaking ability and receiving ability. The questions were about his strength, and then he goes and puts up 25 reps at 225. So he's somebody to look for late in day 3 of the draft. All right, let's hit the chat. Who would you like to see the 49ers add? Today was the beginning of the off-season deal, it looks very much like they're not going to go receiver. It looks very much like they are going to go quarterback, like they are going to go tight end on offense. And we know that they're probably going to take an offensive tackle in this thing. So that's where your needs are on offense: tight end, quarterback, offensive tackle. Will they take a running back? Man, the Keaton Mitchell I've seen in a couple mocks to them. He's a super speedy kid from East Carolina. He would be intriguing if they could find a running back who, I mean, I think they will add a running back, whether it's whether it's after the draft or day 3 of the draft. I could see them adding a running back. And there's a couple guys that are incredible in this draft. Tyjae Spears from Tulane. Anybody who saw him light up SC in the bowl game, my God, or late in the year, I should say. Tyjae Spears is incredible. And then he went to, I think, the Senior Bowl and looked terrific. He's kind of sawed off, about 5'10", but he's tremendous. Keaton Mitchell's tremendous. There's some running backs in this draft. The Anabaconda kid from Pittsburgh. If you guys saw my video on YouTube on Anabaconda, I mean, my goodness, you're talking about 220 pounds and he's just explosive. I mean, you're talking about a guy who can hit the hole and just be gone. And so those guys, I mean, if they could get a true difference maker back, you could always use a back. And then there's always a lot of good backs that are going to be picked even late. So, yeah, how about them? Says Keaton Mitchell has the speed we're missing at running back. Yeah, I mean, he can get to the edge. I mean, he can get to the edge for sure. Luke Luna says a 4.28, 4.3 running back, 100%. Yeah, I mean, here we go. 49er Josh says, yeah, Israel Anabaconda is his last name from Pitt. They call him Izzy. I mean, Izzy is sick. There's no question. Eric says, yeah, the Pittsburgh running back. Lotha Truth 05 says Devin Akane. I'm an A&M fan, so I've seen a ton of Akane. Akane's super explosive, but he's kind of rocked up and he gets knocked off his feet a little easy. But man, you're talking about total home run hitter. He might be more of a return man, and he might be more of a receiver than a running back. I don't love Akane as his pick and slide, and his instincts are just kind of eh. But you know what? As far as like he hits the hole or you get him out in open spaces, you throw this guy the hitch, you do an end around, and Akane take it to the house. I mean, he's Jay says Akane's tiny. He's tiny, but fast. Fast. The Car Gods. Larry, can you tell everyone that Brock Purdy is the one being developed and not Trey that's working with the enemy? Who's Trey working with? Mahomes? At this point, it's like the opening scene for the movie About Last Night with Jim Belushi and Rob Lowe and Demi Moore. He's like, was she a pro? Was she a pro? And Jim Belushi's like, at this point, we don't know. I think that's about as far as I would go on the Niner quarterbacks. At this point, we don't know. Because we don't know. We don't know. I mean, I thought there were several indications that looked like the 49ers were on the verge of trading Trey Lance. Now with Brock Purdy in this situation, if he indeed doesn't think that he's going to be back this year, I can't see them moving Trey Lance. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't see it. But if that's just him saying I'm covering all my bases, I don't know. And then what do you make of the DTR workouts? At first I thought, man, they probably like DTR. And hey, they like DTR as an experienced guy. He's played 5 years for the Bruins. And, that quarterback experience, after watching the way Brock has played, maybe the Niners look at, experience now and really value it at the quarterback position. So DTR makes sense. But then to meet with him 2 and 3 times, almost they're a little too smart for that. That makes me think they like Jaron Hall, to be honest. If you said, what's your take on them meeting with Dorian Thompson-Robinson 3 times, my take is that they either like Jaron Hall or Max Duggan or Clayton Tune. One of those guys after that. It could be Jake Haener. I could be Tanner McKee. There's some people that question Jake Hayner's arm strength, but I've seen him make a number of plays outside the numbers. And, I don't think he has a huge arm by any stretch. He's a 6-foot guy, 205 pounds, but he can zip it around and get it around in the intermediate pretty well. To me, Hayner kind of reminds me a little bit of Jeff Garcia in that Garcia was a better mover, but they both are play with tremendous confidence and rhythm, and guys just believe in them. I mean, I just felt like every time I watch Fresno State, it's just like this guy is the leader. I mean, they just absolutely believe in Jake Hayner. And I always felt that way watching Garcia at San Jose State. I felt that way when I saw him in the Canadian League. He just was always that way. The guys believed in Jeff, and I think the guys believe in Jake for sure. McKee's interesting because he's a 6'6" pocket passer who throws dimes. I mean, and he's just very accurate, but he's not very mobile, and I wonder about the durability. Thompson Robinson is a great athlete and has played a ton of football, and you can't really fool him, and he's super athletic, but he's a rhythm guy. And when he's in rhythm, he looks like the best quarterback you've ever seen. And when he's out of rhythm, he looks almost like, who is this guy? Why is he playing? I mean, it's just he gets in and out of rhythm, and it's a lot of it. I mean, he was more in rhythm this last year with Chip Kelly than I'd ever seen him before. I mean, there was times I watched UCLA, their offense was unstoppable. I mean, literally unstoppable. And DTR had a lot to do with that. Jaren Hall from BYU has to be watched. I mean, he looks like a cross between Purdy and Mahomes. He's like Purdy's size, but then he has that Mahomes kind of I've seen him 3 or 4 times this year just take off in the middle of the game. He's basically staying in the pocket the whole game, throwing strikes, got a good arm, really good athlete. And then all of a sudden he'll get one angle and he's gone for 35, 40 yards. So and you look at it and you're like, wow, why doesn't that guy run more? But Jaren Hall's got really, really athletic profile. The people who I've talked to say that Clayton Tune has got, terrific intangibles and that he's a real player. I haven't watched a lot of Houston football. Their offense is not like the Niners offense. There would be an adjustment period there. The guy that's also super intriguing to me is Max Duggan, because Max Duggan could have entered the transfer portal when Sonny Dykes gave the starting job to somebody else his final year, and instead he's like, no, I'm sticking it out. And then he went to Sonny and's like, I'll be the best damn backup quarterback you ever had, scout team quarterback. I mean, that's what you want. That's the kind of guy. And this guy's from this tiny little town in Iowa, and just had a great year. I mean, he's a Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year, won the Davey O'Brien Award, runner-up for the Heisman. TCU goes 12-1. They wind up in the national championship game. This kid's athletic. He runs 4.5. He throws. He doesn't have the best arm ever, but he somehow finds a way to get it done. Kind of like Max Duggan, probably in the 5th round. But yeah, it's a really intriguing quarterback draft for sure. And that's the part that makes you go, what's going on? Is Brock not going to be healthy? Is Trey going to develop? Do they want a battle? Is Darnold going to? I mean, the Niners are. This is one of the most interesting moments in Niner history. They have tremendous talent. They have as good a roster as there is in football. Probably their roster is as good as anybody, but they don't know who the quarterback's going to be, and they're gambling on guys that all have questions. I mean, is Brock going to be the same? Is Trey going to develop? Is Sam Darnold as bad as he's looked with the Jets and basically is almost his whole career except for a little period of time with the Panthers last year? I don't know. I mean, these are these big questions that surround the quarterbacks. And then if they go for a quarterback in the draft, who knows? I mean, I'm not saying that. I still think, probably Purdy's, what we saw last year with Purdy was real. I don't think there are people who are like, that wasn't real. Come on, that was real. He was good. But he also had his arm ripped out by Hassan Reddick. And last I checked, the quarterback's arm is kind of a major part of, what makes them good. So that's a TBD situation for sure. So who knows? Maybe the Niners are looking at this going, you know what? We love Purdy. We love Trey's potential. We think Darnold's got something, but forget the backup idea. We need to go find a quarterback in this draft. The guy that we draft here may wind up being our quarterback long term. We're looking at it as a complementary piece. They might not be looking at it as a complementary piece. They may be looking at the quarterback they draft here. Maybe they may like a guy, enough to be the guy. They may see Jaron Hall as their future starter. They may see Tanner McKee as their future leader. Crazier things could happen than them drafting Jaron Hall or Max Duggan or Tanner McKee or DTR and have them become the 49ers starting quarterback going forward. At this point, I think it's all on the table. I really do. I think there's reasons to love Sam Darnold. There's reasons to be like, what? There's reasons to love Brock Purdy. There's reasons to be like, you can't go with him. There's reasons to love Trey Lance, and there's reasons to be like, he ain't ready. So, there's reasons to doubt all these guys, and yet there's reasons to go with each of them as the starter. And it's going to be fun to watch. I'll say this, mini camp's going to be good. Training camp is going to be better. The preseason, get your popcorn ready because it's going to be fun. And, watching these guys in practice, watching them, compete this summer, watching the reps, who's really throwing it, putting it on the mark, who's moving the team in the preseason. It is going to be good because everybody loves to talk about the quarterback. And on this team, it may be one of the only real concerns. Look at the Niners right now. They're stacked at wide receiver. They've got a bunch of running backs. J.P. Mason looked like a poor man's Marshawn Lynch. He couldn't even get on the field. Never even played. Guy got barely any snaps. He's like 6'3", 240, and runs violently. And he looked great in the preseason. Basically never played. They've got McCaffrey. They've got Mitchell. They've got TDP. They can run Ray. They can run Debo. They've got J.P. Mason. It's just they're loaded at running back. They're loaded at wide receiver. Last year, they were loaded on the D-line. Their linebackers, last year were the best in football. We'll see what it looks like this year. I do think Marcelino McCrary Ball is going to go off. They've got some depth. They need more depth in the secondary. They need more depth on their defensive line. They've got to add a couple of big offensive linemen that they like. They got to get a tight end and who can take over for Kittle or maybe just give them that 2 tight end set. And they need a quarterback. They need a quarterback. It sounds like they need another quarterback because they can't, even though they like all their guys, there's like reasons to not like each one of them. So it's, it'll be, to me, who they pick on, I kind of was thinking quarterback in round 5, 6, but now the more I read about their workouts, I think they're going to use one of those first 3 picks on a quarterback. I really do. I think it's going to be one of those first 3 picks. And I don't know if it'll be McKee or Hall or DTR or Hayner or who. One of those end of the 3rd round picks, I think, is probably going to be a quarterback. All right, I got the schedule for the week. I've got more things to talk about, a couple starred chats to get to, but let's thank our sponsors, Pig and a Pickle, best barbecue in Northern California. Check them out in Emeryville and in Corte Madera. Thanks to Damon and Mary for being proud sponsors of the Krug Show. If you're walking through Emeryville, they're in the Emeryville Public Marketplace. If you're like me and you live out in the East Bay, check them out in Emeryville. But if you're going to Marin County, they're in the Corte Madera Mall, and it looks a bit like this.
New York style sausage was started over 70 years ago. We are the largest producer of fresh Italian sausage on the West Coast.
What makes our sausage in New York style is really the recipe came from back east, from New York, from Connecticut.
If you look at all of our labels, there's maximum 4 or 5 ingredients, which we're really proud of.
There's no preservatives, no MSG, fresh in, fresh out.
The pork comes in fresh, goes out fresh. There's never any freezing throughout the process. We've always used fine quality cuts. We're never going to deter from that. It's one of the reasons why our sausage is so good. I guarantee you put our sausage up against anybody else's from a flavor standpoint, no one will beat it, hands down.
Hey, do yourself a favor and do me a favor. Go buy a package of the New York style Italian sausage. Guaranteed you will love it. Guaranteed.
Welcome back to the Krueger Show, coming down the home stretch on a Monday with Raj, the Raj live stream. Check me out at 3 o'clock, top of the hour on Grant Cohn's channel. Grant and I will chop it up at 3 o'clock. Also tonight, Game 2, Warriors-Kings from the Golden One Center. Fuck the beam. I don't want to see that beam lit. And join us in the postgame. We're going to have a hell of a postgame. Baller's going to be in the house. I think Red's going to be in the house. Cy's going to be in the house tonight. I think John Dickinson from 95.7 The Game is going to join us when his post-game show is over. So we got a lot going on tonight for sure. Let me get to the chat here. Guys, try to keep it somewhat decent in the chat. These people are just battling in the chat. Why can't you be a fan of every quarterback? Why do you have to be like an advocate for a quarterback? They're all Niner quarterbacks. Seriously, I don't remember. There was a Joe versus Steve, but everybody was rooting for the Niners. There was also a Joe and Steve. Like, there were guys that they preferred between Joe and Steve, but they still like Joe and Steve. Do you know what I'm saying? Where I get the feeling that there's people that want Brock to be the quarterback. There's people that want Trey to be the quarterback. A very tiny group of people that want Sam Darnold to be the quarterback. It's basically Brock or Trey. But it's like they only want that. And if it's not Trey, they're not happy. If it's not Brock, they're not. They're all Niner quarterbacks. And it sounds like they're going to need them all. Sounds like they're going to keep them all. We'll see. We'll see. This rest of this week, before I get to the chats, the starred chats. Rest of this week. So 3 o'clock today with Grant. Post game tonight after the Warrior game. Bunch of videos coming out today on the channel. Check them out. Tomorrow, I've got my kids' baseball game. Little Northgate College Park action at 4 o'clock. So I'll be out there. But Vish Kumaran is going to join me tomorrow at 6:45. We're going to join Vish on his channel, I should say, tomorrow at 6:45. Tomorrow at 3 o'clock, Damon Bruce is going to stop by on this channel, on The Krug Show. Wednesday, we're going to be on with Wayne Breezy at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I got some other stuff planned on Wednesday, not confirmed yet, so I won't say it yet. Thursday, I'm watching more high school baseball, Northgate at College Park, or no, at Northgate, I guess it is. So that's at 4 o'clock. Then I've got the Warriors-Kings game 3 at 7. And I'm going to do a stream with Vish Thursday at 3 o'clock. So Thursday at 3 o'clock, Vish will be by. And then Friday, I'm going to be on at 9 a.m. on Grant Napier's channel. Damon's going to be on at 3 o'clock. And I got some other stuff planned as well that I can't announce just yet. So that's what the schedule looks like for the rest of the week. Check us out. We got a lot of great stuff on YouTube. Hope you're enjoying it. And then, of course, tonight we're going to have a blowout post-game game 2. I mean, it's going to be big time. I mean, we're going high flying. No. Hopefully the Warriors even up the series, but it should be a lot of fun. Also, Giants go today against the Marlins. Is that game started? No, that game's a 3-something game. So let's see. And maybe Danny and I will jump in after, let's see, Giants pregame's at 3. let's see. Giants game starts at 3:30. So maybe right around 6 o'clock. An hour before tonight. We'll get with maybe we'll get with Danny and do a little post game Giants leading into the Warrior game. So that's what we got going on the channel for the week. Damon's going to be on, I think, Tuesday and Friday. And I think, we were going to try to do stuff almost every day this week with him, but he's got the fish show. He's going to see fish. So there you have it. And then, or is that early next week? I think he's going to the fish shows. But either way, and then, of course, next week we got the draft. And we'll do a ton of stuff on the draft leading into the draft, and we'll live stream the draft. So keep it right here during the NFL draft as we go pick by pick. Starting Thursday night with round 1, and then rounds 2 and 3 on Friday, and then the big Saturday. Bomber T in the house says, "You're the man, Larry." The camera angle moved on us a little bit, but there we go. Thank you. Kevin Krueger says, "Hammer that like button." Oh, look at that. My kid's in the chat telling people to hammer the like button. Hammer the like button. Slatty says, "My guy Raj." Always nice. 49er Josh, "Hey Krug, on your Telmetrics commercial, can you find out what the theme song is for the commercial?" I can get that information. I will have that for you. We got this one from Judge Shuddy. Klossard, "If Trey was good, we would still be Trey fans, but evidence tells us Brock is better. What do you want us to do? Cheer for the worst player?" How about cheer for everybody? Cheer for everybody, love everybody. From Semi-Pro, maybe the best line ever. Everybody love everybody. Classic movie, Semi-Pro. John B. Purdy's hood, but a small game manager with a weak arm that will never be elite. Face those facts, pal. Never be elite? What's elite? He's undefeated. Car Gods, Jake Hayner over Trey Lance all day. Wow. Car Gods. Hayner. Judge Shuddy. John B. Weak arm. He was number 1 in the NFL outside the numbers. Throws arm. It shows arm is strong enough. Saw you working. I saw you working there. Some of these things have to be interpreted. People are just hammering each other in the draft. We got this one from Marcus. "I still think the Niners should draft a quarterback this draft. Jake Hayner, Max Duggan, DTR, whomever is available." Oh, yeah. You got to go quarterback, especially in this draft. I think it's a good after round 1 draft. No question. Mark Hope says, "Everybody love everybody except Cy and Dan." LOL. Sometimes some relationships are salvageable, others aren't. Let's see. Jan Shozela. "Punctuation is overrated." Oh man, people are losing their mind. Guys, we got to clean up the chat. We got to clean up the chat. People are losing it, going back and forth. Oh my God, people accusing other people of violent acts. All right, that's going to do it for us for the moment. Join me in 27 minutes on Grant Cohn's channel. Until then, thank you to everybody. Join us tonight for post-game. Maybe Danny and I will hook up after Giants Marlins. Come on, Giants, get a win. And then, of course, Game 2, Warriors, Kings, and we're on afterward. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled.